Good evening. In this broadcast, the evening news from the television company Ostankino. The situation, which has escalated to an extreme in the last days in the Chechnya Republic, forces Russian leadership to resort to the most decisive measures. Today, a final decision should be adopted regarding the situation in the Chechnya Republic, said the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, convening the session of the Security Council of Russia. Today, at the session of the Security Council, Boris Yeltsin stated that Russia cannot stand by the wayside while blood flows in one of the subjects of the Federation, that is the Chechnya Republic. According to the President, today a final decision should be adopted regarding measures to regularize the situation in Chechnya, the development of which was delegated to Viktor Chernomyrdin, Oleg Lobov, and other members of the Security Council of the country. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, appealed today to all participants of the armed conflict in the Chechnya Republic. In this address, it says, despite all efforts of the federal organs of state power, the authoritative elders in the Northern Caucasus, admonitions of the Russian and world communities to stop the internal conflict in Chechnya has been impossible. The scale is broadening, the severity of armed clashes is increasing. The conflicting sides are inviting mercenaries to be involved in combat activities, including from foreign countries. Because of the irresponsible politicians motivated by selfish gain and the frustrated ambitions, innocent people are perishing, constitutional rights and liberties of citizens are being trampled upon. The situation is acquiring an extremely dangerous character for the stability and peace in our society, for vital interests and the national security of Russia. On me, as the President of Russia, lies the responsibility for its fate, for the lives and health of all its citizens, expressing the will of our multinational peoples and pursuant to the powers with which I am endowed according to the Constitution of the Russian Federation. I address all participants of the armed conflict in the Chechnya Republic with a demand that within 48 hours from the moment of this address to see that all combat activities be ceased, the laying down of arms should be facilitated, and disperse all armed formations and free all citizens taken prisoner or held by force. If during the established time limit this demand is not fulfilled on the territory of the Chechnya Republic, all forces and means at the country's disposal will be deployed in order to stop the bloodshed and defend the lives, rights and liberties of the Russian citizens, to establish a constitutional lawfulness in the Chechnya Republic, law and order and peace. This was the address of the President, Boris Yeltsin, to all participants of the armed conflict in the Chechnya Republic. Official Grozny felt that the Russian President's address gives the government of Chechnya the right to take commensurate measures in order to defend the territorial wholeness of its country. This is stated in the statement distributed today from the government of the Chechnya Republic. The threat of the Russian Federation declaring a state of emergency on the territory of a sovereign republic, the government of Chechnya feels, contradicts the norms of international law and is an unconcealed intention to interfere in the internal affairs of another country. The Foreign Affairs Department of Chechnya today appealed for support to all heads of the Islamic countries. Despite the address of the President of Russia, combat activities in Chechnya continued even today. We are expecting a report from Chechnya currently. This report is being prepared to be aired, and I can inform you in the meantime which combat activities were underway in Chechnya. 4 jet airplanes launched missile bomb attacks on central Grozny, where since morning a rally of Jahar Dudayev's loyalists was underway. Subjected also to shelling was the airport, which is located 10 kilometers from the city. Currently, fires are blazing in several areas of the capital. The airport is on fire. The number of casualties is being determined. The question, whose airplanes launched the strike on Grozny today, remains open for now. The Military Department of Russia today stated that as far as today's missile air attack on Grozny airport, the Russian armed forces have absolutely no relation to this event. Chechnya opposition in the face of the interim council asserts that in connection with the address of Boris Yeltsin, the advance onto Grozny was halted. At a briefing in the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia, the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Kulikov, to the question, how will internal forces act in the event that a state of emergency is declared in the Chechnya Republic, responded. The decree of the President to declare a state of emergency takes lawful force from the moment of its signing. Henceforth, in the course of 72 hours, if I'm not mistaken, the ratification or re-examination of it should occur in the Federative Council. And how will the forces act? Well, we will act adequately to the situation as it develops. We will fulfill the objectives provided for in the law on internal forces and provide aid to territorial organs of internal affairs or militia, figuratively speaking, in maintaining protection for public order and the safety of citizens. If a state of emergency is declared, then that means in the conditions of a regime of a state of emergency. In connection with the situation in Chechnya, forces of the Northern Caucasus Military District, no special instructions from the Ministry of Defense have not been received yet there. Today, the director of the headquarters of the district, General Potapov, gave an interview to our special correspondent, Alishov Khodjaev. Unconditionally, as a human being and as a military person secondarily, I personally and all the personnel are naturally worried by events occurring in Chechnya, which clearly have acquired a protracted nature. And our position here is in complete solidarity with our commander-in-chief regarding his statement this morning in the address to the Russian people. I think that sooner or later, this precedent will be exhausted and the conflict will find its own logical resolution. On my part, I would say that if the objective was to resolve this problem by combat means, it would present no special complexity for such a powerful country as Russia is today. Regarding specifically the forces of the Northern Caucasus District, there's much published about that with various interpretations and often distorted ones that we are in some way involved in combat on the side of the opposition. That is an absolute lie. The district troops are involved in their usually scheduled activities. Its basic directions are preparations, most of all for winter. The day after tomorrow, the new training year begins for the district troops, and the resignation of retiring military personnel is in its final stages. We have an active conscription campaign underway for youths for the armed forces. These are our basic directions of today's operations. The volatile situation in Chechnya is nervously followed by residents of adjacent Russian regions. The heads of the subjects of Russia in neighboring Chechnya countries turned to the president with a suggestion to undertake measures to create constitutional order in Chechnya. The appeal to President Yeltsin was signed by the president of the Republic of Adygea, the president of Northern Ossetia, the president of Kabardino-Balkaria, the heads of the administration of Stavropol, Krasnodar, Rim areas, the Rostov district, and the head of the Karachaevo-Cherkessk Republic. The president of Ingushetia expressed an initiative on an intermediating mission to normalize the situation in Chechnya. In the protracted resistance among the militarized individuals in Chechnya, it seems everything has occurred. Cruelty, the suffering of people, the death of the elderly, women and children. But no, that's not everything yet. It seems that apparently even in one's own country, a person can be called a mercenary, despite on what side and for what he is fighting. The address of the president, not immediately declaring a state of emergency, but an address, should play a positive role in the plan of the possibilities in the search for paths and options for a peaceful emergence from that situation. Of course, foremost, this is to save human lives. Today in the State Duma, I met three fathers, 3 Russians, whose children are in Dudayev's captivity. 3 Russian officers, from whom commanders disown, and in Chechnya they are called mercenaries. Vasily Dmitrievich Krukov, the father of Captain Krukov Andrei Vasilievich, currently in prison in Chechnya. Barshov Vladimir Ivanovich, the father of the head Lieutenant Marsov Alexander Vladimirovich, currently in prison. Zhukov Yevgeny Kuzmich, the father of Zhukov, the elder Lieutenant Yevgeny Yevgenyich. Andrei graduated from the Suvorov Academy in Sverdlovsk, and he graduated from the Chelyabinsk Tank Academy, served beyond the Baikals, is married, and has a daughter of 2.5 years old. Loves his family very much, his wife and daughter, and that he would become a mercenary. I don't believe this at all. The first time I learned that he was in prison was from the television program, which was aired at 2100 hours on the 27th of November, where on the screen I saw my own son. Where to turn to, I don't know. We have come here to at least find out how and why they found themselves there. We were shocked how it was that they came to be there. On the 24th, I spoke to my son. He said everything was fine. We'd be back in 2 or 3 days. And from the 27th until this morning, we're receiving calls constantly and visits from people who are shocked and bewildered how it is that he could possibly be a mercenary. In the old Tsarist army, they said, I have honor. And they truly had honor. This is dishonorable to fire officers from the army retroactively. I feel that this is a matter for the Chechens themselves to settle this matter peacefully themselves. And I wish no bloodshed to any Chechen. Let them live and let them all prosper. But they need to sit at the dialogue tables and resolve these questions themselves. Thank you. And forgive us for approaching you at such a grievous moment. In connection with the information about the imprisonment in Chechnya of Russian military personnel in the Moscow military district, a departmental investigation was launched. The Ministry of Defense of Russia is verifying information about the possible participation of Russian servicemen in events in Chechnya. However, for now there is no unequivocal answer to that question. This was stated to Tartas today by the head of the Department of Information and Press of the Russian military department, the General Vladimir Kozyrev. And now a special report from the television company Center for Our Agency about today's situation in Chechnya. The calm in combat activities, which was preserved in the capital of Chechnya after the battle in the capital the 26th of November, was interrupted today by a bomb attack from 4 airplanes on the Grozny airport. One of the planes was shot down. The opposition land forces concentrated at the towns of Tostoyurt and Usmartan plan no new aggression and are on combat duty en routes to Grozny. Information on casualties continues to be verified, sustained by both sides during the fighting in Grozny the 26th of November, but today it is known that both sides lost at least 300 people, and furthermore, almost 80 are called missing. The peaceful population views the event as a national tragedy. On the 29th of November, Avtorkhanov and Khasbulatov expressed condolences to relatives of casualties of the Naterich and Grozny regions. The morning statement of Boris Yeltsin was the main topic of discussion in the Republic. This statement caught us by surprise. And moreover, at such a moment when we were preparing again to storm the city, I think that in order to prevent further bloodshed, we will halt the military activity. And in this plan, the instructions of Yeltsin will, after all, play a most significant role. I'm very tired of this lifestyle. I want to return to a peaceful life, put on a suit, shave, stroll through the city. How long can one fight? The Russian military on the border with Chechnya continue to work on their regular schedules and are providing the control pass function. According to the officers, no instructions connected with the statement of the Russian president were received by them. Today in Moscow, the Arch-Hierarchical Council, or Sobor, of the Russian Orthodox Church convened. With a divine service in the Trinity Cathedral of the St. Daniel Monastery began the Arch-Hierarchical Sobor of the Russian Orthodox Church. According to the Orthodox teaching, the life of the Church, and as is obvious, its manifestation in the Council, is conducted under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and the decisions of the Hierarchical Council are obligatory for the entire Church. I'll remind you that the last Hierarchical Sobor was held in June of 1992. This time, 120 bishops have convened in Moscow, heading all the dioceses of the Russian Orthodox Church, just as in the former Soviet Union republics and the distant abroad countries as well. Participating in the council also are heads of institutions of the Holy Synod, spiritual academies, and seminaries. The main topic of the Sobor is the mission of the Church in the contemporary society, the spiritual and religious edification. These are the most serious problems which face the Russian Orthodox Church today, after decades of its existence in a public and social ghetto. Essentially, for the first time in its history, the Church will analyze and define its service in the conditions of a worldly society. Today, when in Russia and beyond it, again, thousands of churches are reviving, in the Church there is a shortage of those who can and must carry the Word of God and resist on locations penetration into Russia of heterodoxical missionaries. Similarly, there is a shortage of instructors for parochial schools and cathedrals. Other issues of the internal church life will also be discussed, including publications, activities, and also the relationship of the Church with the state and with other confessions. The Sobor will end the 4th of December on Sunday with a divine service in the Dormition Patriarchal Cathedral of the Moscow Kremlin, where a canonization will be performed, the glorification of new Russian saints. As a result of the Supreme Soviet of Abkhazia adopting a new constitution pursuant to which Abkhazia has declared itself a sovereign republic with a presidential form of rule, the government of Russia has issued a statement today. In this statement, it is noted that this sudden unilateral action contradicts the obligations taken on by the Abkhazian side for the peaceful resolution of the Georgian-Abkhazian conflict and efforts which were undertaken in the framework of the peacekeeping process of Russia, the CIS, the UN, and the CESC. The head of Georgia, Edvard Shevardnadze, issued instructions today to call an emergency session of Parliament on the 1st of December. At that session, they will examine questions connected with the adoption of a new constitution by the Parliament of Abkhazia and also the causes for the energy crisis in Georgia. Unchanged and difficult remains the situation for residents of Georgia. The republic is in the squeeze of an energy crisis as previously. There is no gas and electricity is also absent in most cases. There are many causes for this situation. They are the unrealized agreement between the government and Iran on deliveries to Georgia of 600 million cubic meters of gas and the accident on the gas line in Turkmenistan. Great hopes were placed also on the 20 billion ruble loan which Russia had promised for the repair of Belgas but could not allocate. And what will they do now? This is the question the government of the country is attempting to resolve today. What is the issue today? First of all, that is to supply bread factories and elevators, hospitals. Some residential quarters, we cannot do this pervasively. We have set up a schedule. Unfortunately, not always are these schedules adhered to. That's the situation. What regards the longer-term perspective, that is another conversation connected with the, again, perspective of the development of our relations with Russia. For almost 2 days without heat are more than 8,000 apartments in the city Palnakh, the satellite city of Norilsk. Pipes which wore down with time did not sustain pressure. As a result, a breakthrough occurred on one of the heat lines. The emergency repair crews were able to control and liquidate the burst area within a few hours. However, this time was sufficient for the extreme cold to paralyze the heating systems in the buildings themselves. To date, apart from homes, 3 schools and 2 nurseries are without heat. Temperatures in apartments does not exceed 10 degrees Celsius even today. Another increase in railway tariffs placed the miners and the coal customers before many difficult problems. They were also encountered in the joint stock company Leninsk Coal. At the Komsomolets mine, news about another increase of railway tariffs coincided with an event which recently would have been celebrated by all Kuzbas. 40 days before the end of the year, the miners have fulfilled the coal mining plan. They stocked up 1,800,000 tons of fuel. By the New Year celebrations, coal piles will grow by another 200,000 tons. However, the comments of the miners on this event are quite skeptical. Already today, at the coal stockyards, which are mountain-like, 200,000 tons lie idle. The reasons for this mismanagement are on the surface. The circle of coal-using territories, because of the cost of railway tariffs, and in many cases transportation costs are more expensive than the coal itself, this circle is catastrophically shrinking. Many railway stations of Kuzbas literally were flooded by wagons needing repair. In order to save villages and towns from freezing, the railway workers of the Kemerova artery and the miners have called an all-hands-on-deck situation. Economic problems and possible solutions remain the main arguments in the battle of politicians for votes of their potential supporters, which they are attempting to recruit during their tours of the regions. For the 3rd week, in an abnormal schedule of work, are the transport workers of Tyumen. The oil sector sits on a dry ration ticket. The problem is even to take the workers to their bore sites and oil shafts to do their work. But despite anything, Tyumen residents are attempting to prevent the catastrophic decline of industrial yield, and they are managing that. However, they are struck down even further for this, painfully, and what's more, in the wallet. In tens of regions, the yield since the beginning of the year has decreased by half and sometimes even more, but Having raised prices on their goods here, they managed by 2 or 3 times to raise their profits. In the Tyumen district, where the decline of productive yield does not exceed 5 or 6%, the industry yielded the smallest profits in Russia, 39%. In the opinion of the Tyumen workers, the state regularization of prices on oil, pumping capital from regions, leaves Tyumen without money, without investments, and without a future. And the comparison of a chicken which lays golden eggs for the country was made by Grigory Yevlinsky. He is meeting today with voters, authorities, deputies, and directors of the industry of the Tyumen district, which he has called a locomotive region, pulling behind it this entire weighty, cumbersome Russian economy. Yevlinsky has brought with him to the northern Rim areas an entire package of drafts and new laws on investments, concessions, on the division of goods. The locomotive, in the name of Tyumen, already today needs the support and attention of the legislative and executive branches of government. This is the opinion of the economist and politician Yevlinsky, who, through this trip, in essence, has launched his pre-election campaign for the presidential post. The world's largest Lebededsky geological plant is the address today of the business trip of Boris Fedorov, the chairman of the deputy group, the Liberal Democratic Union, of the 12th of December. The plant has been a joint share company for 2 years, and one may judge the changes in ownership by the concrete examples in its development. Here, in the center of Chernozemia, at the hub of interests of the major industrialists and agricultural industrial manufacturers, people are particularly interested in the legal regularization of their economic relations with government. The question in Russia today is not so much legislation or money as human capital and concrete management and directors who find solutions and attempt, even given that legal confusion and non-correspondence of laws, especially the condition of the taxation legislation, contradictions between the center and regions, to find their niche and achieve concrete results. 29,000 Estonian krones will be the cost to the Septikar aviation company. The air hijacking of Vladimir Bashkov, who on the 24th of November hijacked at 1:34 to Tallinn. This sum the Russian company will pay to its Estonian colleagues for service of 2 airplanes, the hijacked one and the one sent as a replacement to deliver passengers to their destination. Regarding the fate of Bashkov himself, it was clarified today by the Prime Minister of Estonia, Andres Tarand. He stated that the government of the Republic, in principle, is prepared to extradite Vladimir Bashkov to Russia, but he noted that the study of all circumstances of the matter will take a certain amount of time. As was reported from the Estonian Investigations Bureau, Vladimir Bashkov will be arraigned on the statute of the Criminal Code of Estonia, which provides for a punishment in the form of imprisonment from a period of from 5 to 12 years. It expressed the intention to seek political asylum. According to Bashkov himself, rights were being violated. The 30 his own home, and the local authority his common civil passport. Commit suicide if he was extradited to Russia. Vladimir Bashkov gave an interview to Estonian television. From the depth of my heart, I regret that I committed such a heavy crime. During my 36 years of life, I have not committed a single law violation. I have a pure biography. I lived and worked honestly. I was driven to this condition. How? The Embassy of Russia in Tallinn gave the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs a note with a request to hand over the hijacker of the plane. The term of detention was extended by the Estonian court until the Russian-Canadian relations are developing marvelously. This was stated today by Andrei Kozyrev at a meeting in Moscow with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The progress of the conversation fully next week in the framework of the CESC summit in Budapest, Boris Yeltsin will meet with the Prime Minister of Canada. And in the beginning of next year, the Russian president is expected in Ottawa on a state visit. They also examined issues of preparations for the meeting in countries and Russia. But if during discussion of political problems the format of the 8 is already accepted, then such part of the conference must still be made. At a meeting with the press, the ministers emphasized that the military resolution of the Bosnian problem is unacceptable and assessed as positive the statement of the American Secretary of State, who, for the possibility of the confederative unification of Bosnia, We're very happy, and we hope that this is we have finally on political regularization, and the members of the contact group need to improve the last so that it would be acceptable for all sides, including the situation in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Complicated. According to the American television agency, forces of the Bosnian Serbs are in control of almost half of the of Bihać. Our commentary. It seems that the statement of the American Defense Secretary William Perry that the Bosnian Serbs have, I quote, won the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and that the air potential of NATO will not change anything at this point, corresponds to the reality of today. Although true, the statement of Perry evoked an extremely negative reaction from Muslims. According to the chairman of the Bosnian government, Haris Salajic, the Bosnian Muslims will not submit to the pressure and blackmail from the Bosnian Serbs and will fight to the very end. The question arises, how does one then view the words of Muslim leaders about the desire to cease fire and establish a truce? And it is indispensable because the moral spirit of the government army is currently not was 1.5 to 2 months ago. On the other hand, the forces of the Bosnian Serbs, according to the Zagreb station of the UN forces, have all potential to establish complete control over Bihać, but are not doing this, just as they are not responding to the proposal of the commander of the peacekeeping forces in Bosnia-Herzegovina, General Michael Rose, about the cessation of combat activities and the demilitarization of Bihać. Evidently, Serb leadership in Bosnia is a peace accord and is awaiting from the part of the world community. According to the head of the press service of the UN forces in former Yugoslavia, Michael Williams, who admits that the situation which developed around Bihać has placed the entire peacekeeping UN operation in Bosnia in a critical situation. Boutros-Ghali intends to make a personal attempt to achieve a truce in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Tomorrow he will arrive in Sarajevo for talks with the president of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Izetbegovic, and the leader of the Bosnian Serbs, Karadzic. The draft ceasefire document proposed by the UN provides for withdrawal of troops of all sides from the enclave of Bihać and its transfer under UN control. The Muslim government announced agreement with these conditions. However, from the Serbs, to date there is no response yet. Let not that nonchalance delude you with which the Minister of Finances, Kenneth Clark, raises the red attaché before the television cameras with the text of the budget for the new fiscal year. To lift the budget in reality is far harder, but previously it must be presented with expertise, desirably without surprises, without radical innovations, in a word, without all that which is capable of blowing up the fragile unanimity that the majority loyalties which accompanies the current economic course, and has been inflation. It's being kept under the cap for now, but in 1995 the aim is to reduce it somewhat to 2.5%, that is to the lowest level of the last 27 years. And that means that if you want to keep your foot on the inflationary brake, please live within your means. Based on that simple wisdom, Kenneth Clark has decided that he should not try to please everyone. Among his priority in expenditures are social and education, and more police officers. The priority of revenues into the treasury is taxes on revenues of the population, taxes on supplementary costs, and industry paying insurance contributions. This is in the public plan, but in the personal, cigarettes will be more expensive, prices on beer and wine will go up, and automobile owners will have to pay more for gas and service. And the budget appears to be most kind to pensioners. For them, $15 million will be added to pay for electricity and heating. The pension funds also will be reliably protected against swindling. The cabinet of John Major and the Conservative Party managed by a slight margin to win in the House of Commons of Parliament the contribution into the budget of the European contribution was discussed and adopted on. Recently, it turned out that payments of Great Britain by the end of the century should grow by £800 million sterling. This fact generated disdain among most of the Tory parliament. The opponents of the European Union held in Norway on the question of the country entering the according to official figures against Norway were almost 52% of those who participated in the vote. And hence, the Norwegians, for the second time since 1972, have refused to become a part of a sole Europe. 22 years ago, during a similar referendum, also the opponents of Norway entering the European Union won. Since last night in Belgium, Servants is underway, which will last for one day. Almost 100,000 people employed in work today on the calls of their unions. They're demanding an increase in financing, dignified labor, and just compensation. Normal life in Belgium, including in Brussels, is violated on a day where in the European capital an entire series of international events is underway. The meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and the Ministers of Energy of the EU countries, the dialogues of the leader of the Palestinian Liberation Army, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Israel, Shimon Peres, leader of the Republican majority. Preparation of victory over fascism in Europe these days through France and Russia, a musical festival. The European Crossroads, as it is called today, Strasbourg, celebrated the 50th anniversary of its liberation from the Hitler Army. Closer came the half-century anniversary of the March of Peace through Europe of a dedicated to participants of the motorcade with the television company Ostankino passed through Poland, sent on in the memory of Soviet and who fell for its liberation. Memories about front days, of course, over meetings with those who also passed, or the Polish veterans. And soil are laid to the monument. In the last months, weeks, and days of march through France, the Russian the L'Arc de Soldier, a holy site for resistance movement. A memory and gratitude to brothers and contribution in the common victory. Meetings with the associations of French veterans preparing for the victory. On the itinerary, Italy, Austria, Hungary, the returned to Moscow in the middle of December. Tankograd. This was the pseudonym of the Second World War, and on one of the central squares of Chelyabinsk is a monument carrying themselves in the rear 4,000 combat vehicles, almost and millions of ammunition. The war on in Chile, but not only on the labor road. Many here, among those who clashed on the fronts, 4,000 were maidens. And then, half a century ago, their first waltzes were danced, masculine and severe. Academic, dramatic, severe concert of Masters of Art will be victory. The first of a cycle of Ostankino and my first tour, and of course we perform with the veterans of the war. And here there was the very best to Chile. Century anniversary sciences on occasion session of the General Assembly of the those who participated today, not only Russian history but war, create fundamental science, new technologies had today on the anniversary. Scientists encounter thought. The academic magnetic resonance of science, military activity. The and even define its chemical substance. Among priority works of the recent burns with the aid of pulsating thermometer in the name of Vishnevsky. Infection, specifically cholera, was possible because of level and many other things. Today, employed 5,000 scientific research developed future will be implemented of healthcare. Radio company. At the meeting, they discussed which I hope viewers in the end of the broadcast is the same. Said the festival Olympics the to the they'll still bruise around games in Japan. They substance. Hello. Therefore, here it is cloud.